Welcome to Home Means. I'm your host, Heather Brown, and this is a place where we uncover the real stories behind the people who make our state extraordinary. From unforgettable adventures to everyday moments that shape us, this podcast is all about the voices, the faces, and the experiences that make Nevada truly unique. Let's dive in and get to the heart of what home means. I'm really excited today to welcome the one and only Nevada institution, Senator Richard Bryan. Hi, Senator Bryan.
Good morning, Heather. It's nice to be with you.
Hi, I'm just so excited to have you on the Home Means podcast.
Well, I'm excited about it, too, because home does mean Nevada for me.
That's right.
It does, yeah.
We've had a couple phone calls this week leading up to this, and I am enamored by your stories and just the impact you've made on the state, and I am really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I am, too. We'll cover a lot of years, I'm sure.
Let's start off with the overarching question. How do you define home when it comes to this Home Means Nevada thought?
Well, for me, it's Southern Nevada, obviously, is my home. I came here in 1942 after my father finished law school. He was from Las Vegas, and with the exception of my time in the Army and as governor and attorney general, that's where I've lived.
What was college like when you grew up in Southern Nevada,
Yep.
and you went up to Reno for school?
I can recall running for office. I went to the University of Nevada, had a lot of friends, and they were trying to help me politically, and I'll never forget the best line, he's from Las Vegas, but he thinks like us. Yeah. But I had a wonderful experience. I love Reno. My two older kids, my son is a cardiologist in Reno. My daughter is a very successful lawyer. And I have a little place in Reno, so my wife, Linda, and I get up there from time to time. And, a lot of connections with university days. And obviously, I was in the legislature for 10 years, so I met a lot of legislators from Northern Nevada, and then Attorney General and Governor and U.S. Senator. I met a lot of people all over the state, yeah.
I mean, you really have just been involved in every level of government. I know we had talked previously about high school student government.
Yes.
College student government.
Yes.
And then government.
Don't forget the 8th grade. I was eighth grade class
I would
president.
never forget about 8th grade. Those are informative years.
Well, they were. My 8th grade presidency, Miss Schultz did not particularly care for me. In later years, I appreciated that she was an excellent teacher, but she and I didn't get along real well. And, oh, God, I can recall she'd put her arm on the desk, her head on the desk, and then pound the fist and say, that boy. And she was the only teacher that I had until I got to the university that addressed you by your last name.
I look at your trajectory, and I want to get into some of your firsts. But clearly you were a leader from 8th grade. What qualities do you think you possessed that your classmates saw and said, I can trust this guy. I want to vote for him. I want to make him our president?
I think I was a good people person. I love the personal interaction. I won't say that was a handicap, but I hated to raise money. And that started, it would have been October 1944. The Huntridge Theater had opened, and we lived just a block from it at 1141. It was a big deal. And my dad was a lawyer, so it was not a question of we couldn't afford it. But at that time, admission for a child was 14 cents. And so my mother gave me 14 cents. It was a long line. All of a sudden, the word comes back. It costs 25 cents. I'm going up and down that line, begging for a penny. 11 cents. I made it. I hated what I did. And in my years in public life, if there was an Achilles heel that I had, and I'm sure there were many, fundraising was one of them. If I could talk to two people. In fact, it used to be said, tongue-in-cheek, of course, if two or more people are gathered, Bryan will be there. Now, that was an exaggeration, but I really did. I did enjoy people, and I think that helped a bit. And if you kind of have an idea where you want to go, and I had a pretty good sense. You know, my dad had a profound impact on me. His childhood was difficult, and he was always for the underdog. And he said, even as a child, he said that every citizen in the community has an obligation to pay his or her civic rent. And by that he meant contribute to the community. Didn't mean you had to be in public life, holding elective office or working for some agency in government, but contribute something. And that struck with me. He was public service. That was what he was interested, running for public office a number of times. And there's no question that had an impact on me.
Yeah. And I do think, not to overgeneralize, but this sense of community and public service and giving back, I don't feel it as prevalent in our society today. So when I get to talk to someone like you who has led a life of public service, I get very inspired to want to continue, along my journey of that.
I tell people, I said, well, look, get involved in a campaign and see what it's all about. Elective office may not be what you're all about, but there are people that are doing wonderful things for us at the local level, state level, federal level. I've always found that if you're reasonable with them, they're reasonable with you. Now, there are some notable exceptions. I think all of us in life have met some real jerks, but by and large, that's been my experience. If you're nice to somebody, they're nice to you.
This world is changing every day, and it would be impossible for something that worked for someone in Georgia to be the same thing that worked for someone in Nevada, because Nevada is we are its own ecosystem. We think about things differently. This is why I choose to live here, is because this is my favorite place on this planet, is our state right here, because I love the way we can get along together. We can,
Yes.
When the weather is right, we can do anything.
You can meet your governor, your United States senator, in a state like California with nearly 40 million people. It's very, very difficult, and no disrespect intended to them. When I was governor, George Deukmejian, who had been Attorney General in California at the same time that I was Attorney General, and we still had communications. I remember one time he came up to Carson City, and we had lunch together. Yeah. I don't recall that there was a big polarized divide.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that we always agreed on everything, and sometimes there were votes that a majority of Republicans would vote for it or against it, but party line votes were very rare, very rare.
Yeah, we went down to substance.
Yeah, I mean, I was pleased to work with a number of Republican colleagues who we worked together to accomplish some legislation. One good example of that is the Southern Nevada Public Management Act. That was a piece of legislation that I'd introduced, and the senator from Missouri, Kit Bond, who he was a former governor, now a senator from Missouri, we worked on that together. Yep.
I mean, yeah, and I want to actually talk about, maybe there's a compare and contrast that you can make. Obviously, you were in the legislature, and you had two competing houses, but two competing parties. Yes. Then as governor, you had the mix. And then when you were in the Senate, you had a whole different array of people that you had to deal with. What has been your experience in bipartisanship from each of those levels of government?
Well, I can give you an example. When I was Attorney General, there was NAG, the National Association of Attorneys General. Now each party has their own organization. So when I was Attorney General, I mean, our organization was really quite bipartisan. I think, 1 year a Republican chaired the group, and another year the Democrat alternate. That doesn't happen today. Now, I don't want to give your viewers a sense that there's no hope. There's some good people that want to work across the aisle, and I think we're going to see some of that in this session of the Congress. I certainly hope so. Unfortunately, the state legislatures have become almost a model of what's happened at the federal level. They are become very partisan, and you see a lot of party line votes. I hate to see that, but that's the reality, and there are some exceptions, of course, who do work across the aisle and accomplish things.
It's my hope that there will be a pendulum swing in the opposite direction.
I have to believe that, yes. But we talk about the polarization, and as I think Shakespeare said, the fault, dear Brutus, lies not in the stars, but our eyes. Yes, we elect the people that we criticize or say, they don't do anything, they don't reflect my views. Well, get out and vote.
Right.
Yeah.
And I tell people, run for office yourself.
Yes.
There's nothing more. What's that old adage? If not me, who? If not now, when?
Yeah.
And some people can't do it.
Yeah.
And if you have the thick skin and the wherewithal and the abilities to do it, your voice matters. And it's tough in this state when we don't pay elected officials for their time, and a lot of people have to be self-employed or have a very flexible job. Yeah. But
that's particularly true in the state legislature. It really is. There's a financial burden that you pay there. I have to tell you that, and I don't think that's any better today. And I don't think there's really much difference. Now we have a 120-day session, and after that first 60 days, I think it is, there's no compensation. Now there's
right.
There's a cost of living. You get kind of a little bit of money for but I mean, it's there's not the salary is not anything that would make it the issue that you decide to run.
It's a bit of a deterrent for sure.
Yeah, well, it limits the number of people who realistically can run for public office, like the legislature in particular, where you're away from as a Southern Nevadan, you're away from your home. And I had a wonderful legal secretary. Now today we call those legal assistants. She was outstanding. I would get to Las Vegas maybe by 2 o'clock on Friday. The legislature kind of recessed for the weekend, and I would race to the office, get there about 2 o'clock while the offices were still open, and she agreed to work a certain number of hours on Saturday. Yeah, but it was challenging, and I'm not suggesting it's less challenging today.
Yeah. Well, at least the commute is faster.
Yeah.
52 minutes up and down on the plane, and obviously the drive to Carson from there. But it is at least more tenable to go up for the day and come back.
Yeah. Well, and you do get to know people. I mean, it was a smaller world. Chick Heck and I served in the state legislature together. Frankly, at the beginning of the session, sometimes we drove up together, and I mean. Years later, we're running against each other, and after I was successful in defeating him and finished my own term, one of the first guys said, "Dick, let's get together for lunch." Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's no better way to start off a 120-day session than with a good lunch. Start off on a good foot, right?
Sure, you bet.
I'd like to think back on your time in office. Obviously, we've covered many decades. I'd like to dig in a little bit deeper, just because I do think you have insurmountable, incredible stories that people want to know about. Our state has changed so much, and yet there's something very authentic about our state that I wasn't around, but through my interviews and through your conversations, I do think that there is a wild, wild west spirit that has maintained throughout its tenure since we've been a state.
I've had some experiences. When we first went to the legislature, Harry Reid was elected to the state assembly for the first time, and Howard McKibben, a Republican speaker, dubbed us as the Gold Dust Twins. He had been so dubbed in an earlier legislative session with another colleague. And so we were eager young people. Boy, we were in a hurry. And I'll never forget it. Bill Swackhammer had been the speaker from Battle Mountain, been in many sessions in the legislature. And one time he came up to the two of us and he said, Harry and Dick, this is not the last legislative session that's going to convene, as if to say, you don't have to do it all in one week. And we did introduce a lot of bills, but one of the stories that not everybody will remember, Harry had been the city attorney in Henderson, and the chief of police had asked him to introduce legislation to increase penalties for firebombing. That decade had a lot of fire bombings, and the Vietnam War had become a very divisive issue. And so Harry said to me, he said, would you like to co-sponsor this? And I said, I sure would. I mean, I'd been public defender, so I wanted to make sure that law enforcement knew that I was not an enemy. Gosh, we got it out of the Assembly Committee. We got it out of the State Assembly. And going over to the legislature, the State Senate, I knew it's going to be a big problem because the chairman, who was a Democrat, did not like lawyers, and young lawyers in particular. So we needed somebody, and he was the deputy legislative council director, Frank Dakin, who for many years and Dakin had that way of saying, and this piece does this and that, and everybody really respected him, and rightfully so. So Dakin came over and supported our bill. Whoa! So in those days, the state Senate did not debate bills coming to the floor in general. There were exceptions to that. And the feeling was, wait a minute, the Assembly, the committee that was assigned to the bill processed the legislation, and it's somewhat disrespectful. Okay, so now it comes on the floor for a vote. In the old legislature, there was a balcony, and Harry and I were the only two people there, and a state senator got up, and he had been the state fire marshal in his city, and he got up and, God, he was rhapsodic about the bill. I mean, if there had been the hi-fi at that time, we would have been slapping one. And he went on and on and on. I said, my God, it doesn't get any better than this, And then he said, it's such a great piece of legislation that I introduced and passed the same bill, identical, in a previous session. Oh my God, we were just, But, so those are two young guys that were in a hurry, and we had kind of some of those experiences. It was, we had some fun as well as hard work. I don't think those are mutually inconsistent. I worked pretty hard, and I think everybody would acknowledge that I had some fun when I was in the legislature.
I mean, look, if you're having somebody call you both out for being in a hurry, I think you're doing something right.
Oh,
you weren't there to waste the constituents' time. You were there to represent.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you'd go back, and there were votes that were tough votes. One time, and this is a legislative story, a representative from Mesquite, there's a piece of legislation, I think it may have been a revenue bill, some kind of a tax bill, and the roll call began, and this guy jumped out of his chair, and the fire escape was right outside, opened the door, and went down the fire escape. You could hear him clattering down because it was metal. What's this all about? So anyway, Bryn Armstrong, who wrote for the Las Vegas Sun, wrote a column. He was from Mesquite, Nevada, and he dubbed the column the Mesquite Mosquito. The Mesquite Mosquito. So those kind of things. Didn't happen all the time, but there were some humorous things that did occur from time to time. And yeah,
You told me a story about when you were governor,
yes,
and how you tried to bring a little bit of levity
yes,
to, you had
yeah,
a legislative session that was
yeah,
well underway.
yeah.
I'd love to hear that again.
Yeah, well, I did. I'm a newly elected governor, and the assembly is now controlled by the Republicans. And the Republican Speaker, Bill Bilyeu, was complaining bitterly that my administrators wouldn't speak to him. So Bill Bible, my budget director, and a guy that also was politically savvy, his dad had been the United States Senator for several terms. So anyway, Bill suggested a little levity. So he dressed up one of my staffers in a clown costume, walking over to the building. My God, what is that? The phone. She's walking in to the the speaker's office, and she said, "I have a message from the governor." And God, he came out, and she began this little ditty: "Roses are red, violets are blue. I'll have my administrators speak to you." Oh my God, the place erupted. Yeah, kind of got, and things worked out. We got into a much more positive and easy relationship, I guess I would say. But yeah, so we did things along those lines. Yeah, yeah.
But I like that. I like that you didn't take yourself too serious. Because
No,
I think
no.
that's when a politician loses its ability to connect with people, is when they take themselves so serious.
Yeah, and I have to say that I believe one of my strengths is I had no problem appointing people who were a lot smarter than I. And I had no problem, and one in particular, Marlene Lockhart, who just was so helpful. She did not have a university degree, but she was as smart, savvy, and tough as anyone. And I appointed her as my chief of staff, the first governor ever to do so. And even my legislative friends would tell me, nobody's going to talk to her. And I said, I think Marlene's going to be able to handle herself. She did, and she did a great job. So yeah.
It also sounds to me like you have quite an eye for talent.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And again, I wanted people who would tell me honestly what they think. And I have to say that sometimes as I look back on my career, it was the press release that I did not issue, the speech I did not give, the column I did not write, because that did help me a number of times. Your group is all fired up. This is what we need to do. And, it used to be called group speak. I'm sure there's better terms today. And you need somebody. And Marlene Lockhart kind of filled that. She'd say, Governor, have you thought about this? And she knew that she could do that and not be excluded at the next meeting when, as I would call it, the signals were called. Sometimes people are saying, look, if I tell the senator I think it's not a very good idea, I'm not going to be included the next time. I welcome that, and I feel it helped a lot for me. And I think any chief executive in the public sector or the private sector needs people who can tell them, you need to think about that.
I think that speaks volumes for the impact you were able to make throughout your career, is because you allowed people around you who had a different point of view.
Linda and I have been married now, will be a year in August, and she and Bonnie, who'd been my wife for nearly 45 years, have been good friends. So Linda will say something, and so the girls meet. I said, what's the source for that? Who told it? Is it reasonable? Does that sound like something that person would say? Now, you don't have a lot of time to dig deep into everything that you hear, but I think it's just a little cautionary note there. Yeah.
And really trusting your own instincts. Because if
Yes.
something doesn't feel
Exactly.
right, it is okay to not have a reaction.
You're absolutely right. You say, look, I've known that person, and I know what his or her point of view is on this issue. I can't believe he or she said it. My initial reaction is skepticism. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound like him or her. Yeah.
I think that's got to be a really tough, transition for someone to not only just change positions, but really put into perspective your network.
Yes. Yeah.
Are these my friends, or were we just
Yes.
collaborators?
Yeah.
Did we just build something? And
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you are always going to have the root of what you did for the state in common.
Yeah.
And that is a nice thing to reunion on.
Yeah.
But it is probably that's got to be such an interesting, because you went from so many different positions.
Yeah. Well, I think people would say, he was not always correct. I didn't agree with him on a legislation. But, the guy, he was honest, hardworking, and tried to do his best. I couldn't ask for a better compliment than that, because that really is me. I did work hard. And I loved it. I loved it. So I don't mean to say it was a labor. The Chinese say that if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day of the rest of your life. And that really kind of sums up my experience in politics. I really loved it. And I had a wife, Bonnie, who loved it. It wasn't just, God, I'm obligated as his wife to go to these small places all over the state. And she was great at it. And she was a big asset. She really was. And I don't think I could have done what I did without her. And our kids were little when I started, but they were on the campaign trail too. So.
Well, and that's a real testament to not you just as a Nevadan, but you as a father and a husband, right? You had a family that, for all intents and purposes, changed the trajectory of their lives too, to support your dream. And I think the theme here, and one thing that in studying your career, it is, you were a people person. You were clearly someone who understood that what you were trying to do was going to ruffle feathers, but you're doing it for the betterment of the state.
Yeah.
And that affected your family, that affected your friend circle, everything. But, it was a life that you dedicated to the state, and I think that's something I really want to celebrate.
But I enjoyed it. It was my dream, and not everybody lives their dream. But it did create pressures on the family. For example, even when I was at home, I had a lot of meetings and everything, and Bonnie tried to make sure that we had dinner together. And sometimes the dinner was at 7 or 8 o'clock at night because I had something. I think that helped. She just was a superb mother. We had 3 kids, and she knew that each one of them had a little different personality. I said, look, this is what we're going to do. Bonnie would be able to talk with them and explain 1, 2, 3, and the kids were just great, and they saw the inside of it. All 3 of them are pretty political savvy, and but they saw it, and they saw in later life we did some fun things, but not everything was all that much fun in terms of places that we went and took them to, but they were very supportive.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a military household. We moved around a lot. So listening to your story about how the family had to make sacrifices, I feel like, that's what a family does. They make sacrifices for each other. You were just asking your family to make sacrifices on behalf of the state of Nevada.
Well, I guess in a way, I have to say I never really thought of it that way, but yes, in other words, their sacrifice enabled me to do what I wanted to do, and hopefully what I was trying to do was in the best interest of the state.
Well, a big theme in on this podcast is, we're all living our lives. We're involved in different things, whether you're an elected official or running a company or higher education. But there is a very stark difference between just showing up for work and going home at the end of the day, and then being passionate about making the state better. And it is unequivocally, for me, looking at your trajectory, that you have made this state better.
Well, I appreciate you saying so. I mean, it's probably too late for the historians to write everything about what I did, but there were, and some of the staffers had a lot of fun too.
But you, look, I spent a lot of time researching you, and as far as I can tell, your decisions were made with the best of intentions.
Best of intention.
With the best information you had in the moment, and the heart that that you needed to make a positive impact.
Well, people do have different opinions and respect that. Mark Twain once said, if two people, he used the word man, but if two men agree on everything, one of them is unnecessary. I always thought that, yeah.
But it goes back to your idea. Why do you want a bunch of yes men around?
Exactly, yeah.
You might have you have to obviously trust your own instincts and think that you're going to make the best decision at the end of the day, but you are not going to think of every single angle, problem, potential pitfall.
Well, and you wanted smart people to carry out what you were trying to accomplish.
I know I never want to be the smartest person in the room, so you and I are always going to have to be in the same room together, so I can always be learning.
Well, I was going to say the same thing about you. But yeah, and I think it was an era too with respect to the media. I was honest with them. If I had misled them or told them something was true, I'd call back and say, look, what I told you this morning was inaccurate, and I wanted you to know that. I think it helped me. I think they probably cut me more slack than I was entitled to, but I don't know if that still exists today. In other words, in my time, if you misled a journalist, hey,
it meant something.
Yeah, you've created a situation where that person is going to be tougher on you, and not and challenge you. Conversely, I'll never forget, I'd been elected, and it was a closer election than it was expected to be. And so one of the questions was, what do you say about the tens of thousands of people that voted against you? And I said, I tell them there's a period of redemption for everyone. Tongue in cheek. And I had fun with the press too. I don't mean to say that they weren't hard on me.
Yeah.
But there was no question that I had a good relationship, and it's one that I tried to cultivate by being honest with them. Now, I didn't tell them all of the backstories, obviously, and there were many things that I did not share with them, but when it comes to something that's part of my legislative or political agenda, they've got a right to, hey, how about this? And you think, look, I think in retrospect it was a mistake. I appointed a person to the Public Service Commission. I think it's now called the Public Utility Commission. And her father was on the board of directors for Southwest Gas. And the advocate that I had appointed when I was Attorney General said, that person can't serve because her father-in-law is the chairman of the board of Southwest Gas. And I was thinking in my own mind that I could simply ask her to just recuse herself. But it lit a fuse, and my God, there's all kinds of, you terrible mistake, what are you going to do? And she was a very tough, able person, but it was a mistake to appoint her because of the relationship there. And so I called her and asked her to resign, and I would make it clear it was my mistake and appoint her. She refused to do so. Oh, my Lord, for a time it was really, really tough. And anyway, we found that she had been registered as a Democrat some years before, and the position that I had appointed her was evenly divided, so there could only be so many Republicans and so many Democrats. And you can't change your party within 2 years, or else you get the message that I'm really a Republican, but I changed. Yeah. And she had changed her party. And so the Attorney General, who I had a good relationship with, Brian McKay, better relationship as the time went on. She couldn't, and then there's a legal that she could not hold, and so McKay took the necessary action. So I was asked, what can you say? Said it was a mistake. I kind of feel like it was the quarterback in the recent Super Bowl.
Just didn't show up on Super Bowl day.
I said, I wish I had the ball back.
Yeah.
And that ended it, Yeah.
Well, but I'm glad that there was a way to think through it and try and process it.
Yes. Yeah.
Your 6 years as governor, I'd love to know what you would define as like one of your biggest triumphs.
Well, the state was in a recession, a very deep recession, and I think the prevailing view was, that our economy is unique. There had been previous recessions, and we were seemingly unaffected, but this was real. And so although there had been efforts to diversify our economy, that was really my top priority. So I was able to legislatively reorganize the economic development, and we emphasized film production as well. And I think the successes that we had there would be considered among the things that we accomplished. I believe the appointments that I made on certain boards, the Tahoe, Nevada board that governs issues at Lake Tahoe, my appointments that were very environmentally sensitive. And I'd say that would be some of the things that we did that I think ethics were a big issue for me, and we pushed on some ethical legislation that I had supported when I was governor. And then I think, by and large, I gave women opportunities that they may not have had. Several of the women that I had that were in key positions were not university graduates. They were smart. Jenny DeVoe, who headed up my Las Vegas office, kind of a funny story. So she came to Las Vegas as a dancer at the Sahara Hotel. So now, years later, I am the Attorney General, and I want to change the classification. In Bob List's tenure, the person was a lawyer, but I wanted to change the classification. And so, what's her resume? And frankly, it's something that, as a governor, they're going to help you out. Pardon me, as Attorney General, they're going to help you out. She had been a dancer, and so her resume included dancer at the Sahara Hotel. I showed that to the folks that are, and my God, they took it back, and I could hear them laughing, and the word circulated, the governor wants some bimbo dancer to head up his office in Las Vegas. She was sophisticated, articulate, could not have made a better choice. Again, she was one of the women that I had appointed that didn't have a resume. I used to embarrass poor Marlene Lockhart, who just still is a very good friend, and no one was more supportive. And so sometimes I'd say, well, I'd like to have you meet my chief of staff. She graduated from Sparks High School. Oh, God, she just hated that. But she was good and tough, and so those women made a big difference, but it opened opportunities for them. Yeah. And I was proud to have done that. I think that would maybe be something that would, maybe people would give me a pass on that one, yeah.
I do think, and I've interviewed a couple people, and I look forward to hopefully getting former Mayor Jan Jones on Blackhurst on the podcast, because being the first female mayor.
Oh, yes.
I look back, the 90s were not that far removed.
No.
And so many firsts and so many doors that were open, so many glass ceilings that were broken.
Yes.
And I think it's really wonderful for you to play a piece of that.
I am proud to say that I think I did play a part. Uh, and they were so motivated
Hmm.
to make sure that they worked hard for me and did the right thing so that nobody would ever say, how in God's world could he have ever appointed him or her? Yeah. Made a
That's
big
right.
difference. And I think it helped me too. Yeah.
And I think when you give someone an opportunity,
Yes.
if they are a genuine person, that they're not going to squander it.
No.
And yeah, you might have taken what could potentially be seen as a risk because maybe people were critical of your choices. But I'm really glad that, I'm just glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that when you have someone who sits in a seat of power, to have empathy towards finding the best person regardless of what their actual resume might say, and wanting to build a good team around you. So
Yeah. Yeah. Resumes are important. I was a member of the Alpha Tau Omega at the University of Nevada, and they said, look, every time I look at a resume and somebody says they're an Alpha Tau Omega, what does that mean? I said, they're a fraternity brother of mine. Let's take a look and see
yeah.
if he or she is qualified.
It's funny. I graduated from Leadership Las Vegas last year.
Okay.
And I do feel like it is a kind of a fraternity here in
Yeah.
town because you go through 10 months where
Yeah.
you really
Yes.
do learn the ins and outs of the city, and you learn how to ask better questions, but more importantly, you ask where the gaps are, and then you can start to plan for that.
It's a wonderful program.
Oh,
It's
I'm
a
so
wonderful
grateful for
program,
the Vegas
yeah.
Chamber for it. And I know Henderson Chamber has it as well, and I'm sure it's up north. I think these chambers wanting to be this conduit to help people, but I liken it to a fraternity in
Yes.
school, because you have some commonality with someone.
Yes, yes.
And it
Yeah,
goes
I
back
think
to
it's
the
right.
thing we talked about at the top of the hour,
Yeah,
where, anonymity is such a prevailing way to communicate, and commonality, and people don't take the time to get to know them. And so we have to use these shortcuts, fraternities, maybe political parties, but organizations that we're involved in,
Exactly.
volunteers we do. And I think that is a real way that people, in the hustle and bustle of 21st century living, I think that's a real way that people can find community and hopefully, be engaged with the world around us, because I think that's what makes Nevada so special, is people are willing to
To do
give
that.
back and give in and give their time, money, and talent and treasure. And it makes me really proud to be a part of a community that puts a focus on that.
Well, that organization is very helpful. And there are people that are out there that sometimes we talk about the negativity, and there's no question there's plenty of that out there, and we've talked in the course of our discussion about how polarized the state and the country is. But there are people out there that don't necessarily want to be involved in running for public office or in a campaign,
Mm-hmm.
but they found their niche.
Mm-hmm.
They've joined an organization which shares common interest, and they want to make an interest in the community. Every time I see that sort of thing happen, I always think of my dad and him talking about everybody has an obligation to pay what he called his civic rent. And there's so many people in our community that are willing to do so. And many of them have found that by becoming involved, I think I'd like to be a decision maker too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a step. And that's happened a lot, particularly with Leadership Las Vegas. It's a great program.
I love that, paying your civic rent,
Yes.
because it is so true, right? We get so many advantages. I think I saw a quote where it was like, we live in the most amazing time in human history, but also the most chaotic time in human history. And one way that we can solve for that is giving back, giving of yourself in any way you can. And even if it's just voting and taking that civic, mindedness and being a part of the process, I really want to challenge people to, not just on the election day, but go to town halls, go up to the legislature, lobby. You said this earlier. You can go to a diner and run into your attorney general.
Yes, yes.
Everyone is accessible in this state, and that is the beauty. I like to say for Southern Nevada that there are 2.4 million people, and I know all 50 of them.
Well, there's true, and I think obviously there are different personalities in the day. I loved parades, absolutely loved them. There's a place called Hazen, Nevada, that most Nevadans wouldn't know a thing about. It's between Reno and Fallon on Highway 50. And I remember the Hazen Days parade probably had 3 or 4 cars in it. And we went around 2 or 3 times. True story. I was governor. And I was in the parade. Yeah.
Like, it's me again. It's me again.
How are you? We've done this before. Oh, yeah.
I do love a parade, too.
Yeah. Oh, I love parades. I did,
If I already wasn't obsessed with you, I'm already, that's just another reason. I really, I don't use this term lightly, but you have been described as a Nevada institution. And I know that is an important term for anybody to be associated with, but that means that you have a very impactful legacy. And how would you want people to describe your legacy for the state of Nevada?
Well, I think I would want them to say that, number one, he was an honest man. He worked very hard, always tried to do what he thought was in the best interest of the public, and he had a sense of humility about him that may have guided and helped him in doing what he wanted to do during the 10 years he served in the legislature, the 4 years as Attorney General, the 6 years as governor, and the 12 years in the United States Senate. And I think I was the same person the day before I held any of those offices as I was the day after.
I mean, I think you just gave me chills that I'll never get over, because I think that is such an incredible way to describe. And the fact that, anybody, you are going to go through a lot. You're going to be tested. You're going to, there's opportunities for you to be power hungry or whatever it is. And so I genuinely do believe that you were the same person that you were in 8th grade when you got elected.
Yeah. And people say that. He was that way in the 8th grade. And I think your viewers need to know that it wasn't always a clear slide. For example, in high school, I ran for freshman class president and lost. I ran for sophomore class president and won by 1 vote. I ran for student body president and lost, and then was elected class president, senior class president. Those were learning experiences as well. In other words, you can learn by your mistakes, or you can learn by, for example, when I ran for student body president at Las Vegas High School, I had become the basketball manager, student manager, and so I got to know all the athletes, and they were, all from my campaign, and there was one humorous experience. It may be hard for your viewers today, but with one high school, oftentimes we were able to get some of the stars of the day that would come down and do a little bit of entertainment for us, typically, later in the morning, 11 to 12. And so on this particular day, we were scheduled to make our speeches why we should be elected student body president, and the act was a group that performed with eels, electric eels. And so all of a sudden, the person that was running the exit, are there any volunteers? These athletes, the jocks, if I can use that term, we want Bryan, we want Bryan. I had about as much interest in touching that eel as having a frontal lobotomy, but there's 1,300 students there, and if I wimp out on this, So I went down. Every word of this is a true story, and I touched the eels. It was not not all that bad, but it gave me the opening line for my address, and I said, in the few minutes I have to spend with you, I hope I can electrify you as those eels did me. It wasn't good enough, and I lost to a wonderful guy and learned a lesson. I didn't spend as much time with the freshman class, who in those days basically were in Fraser Hall, and there were more of them than there were of the jocks and some of the insiders, and I never forgot that. And when I ran for student body president at the University of Nevada, there was independent at Lincoln Hall, and a lot of the veterans lived in Hartford Hall and Hartman Hall, and I went to every door and knocked. But the lesson came from that student body. Yeah.
But I love that even at such a young age, you saw where your misstep was, and you were able to correct it.
Yeah.
And it's a test bed, right? At your very next campaign, you said, "I'm not going to make that mistake. I'll make other mistakes,
Exactly.
but I'm not going to make that mistake."
That's exactly right. You know, I think for young people who might be viewing this, you know, there are going to be mistakes that you make in life. There are going to be defeats, may not be in public office, but learn from your mistakes, and I think that's helpful. And yes, people say I'm a lucky guy, and I have been so lucky with a wonderful family. My father, who was prominent in the community, helped. And just as a sidebar, I mean, the student body manager the year before I became the student body had stepped down, and so it was open. And I knew that my dad knew Pat Diskin, the basketball coach, and I said, "Dad, would you call?" And he did. Said, send your kid on over. And and there was another lesson that I learned early in life. It's not always what you know, but who you know.
Mm-hmm.
And another lesson that you learn, you don't do it on your own. There are mentors that are a big help. John Mowbray, then a district court judge, took a liking to me when I was public defender. And I actually got ahead of the story. I applied for the job, and I was only 28, and there were other candidates in there. And John Mowbray, who had brought the public defender program to Las Vegas, was my advocate. And I got the job, and I would not have gotten the job without his support. But yes, I've been very lucky. But the Chinese say that luck occurs when opportunity collides with preparation. And that's so true. You've got to be in a position that you're eligible to make that next step or move, and preparation is a big part of it.
And I think the fact that at 28 you were our very first public defender speaks volumes to the amount of preparation that you were willing to put in to be prepared at such a young age.
I did, and as I was a deputy district attorney for 2 years, and that's really what gave me the opportunity. I really did not know Judge Mowbray, certainly not well. I knew him as a district court judge, and may have appeared before him in the district attorney's office. In fact, I know I had several trials with him now that I think. But you know, that experience that I had as a deputy DA made it possible for me at least to be considered. You know, if I was just a lawyer that had stepped off the curb, and I don't think that would have happened.
Well, but that might not have happened, but it doesn't sound like you would have allowed for that not to happen, given how much thought you put into your career from 8th grade wanting to be governor and manifesting it through all your hard work and dedication.
Well, but I guess I was fortunate in the sense that I knew what I wanted to do and tried, sometimes unsuccessfully, to go along that path that would make it possible. There are people that graduate from college that are not sure they know what they want to do. And so I have a lot of sympathy for them. I always knew they're trying to find out, what they want to do for the rest of their life.
I think it is hard, especially now. What do you want to do for the rest of your life? So much pressure gets put on,
Yes.
Teenagers. You're teenagers, and I get it. Teenagers used to be married and, start families. But the world is a very complicated, different place now.
Yeah.
And, I am looking at, from a higher ed lens, how do we make sure that we're setting our students up for success? School is not for everyone. So are there certification programs that we can have? Are there, financial literacy classes that will help them be better citizens? And I do think that the community owes our citizens opportunities to be that, because I don't know if back in the day if parents were supposed to teach their kids this, but I think parents don't know. And so we can't hold them responsible to then also teach their kids something they've never been taught. And so I do think this is an opportunity where community can really give back and help people decide what they want to do by just exposure and give opportunities.
Yeah.
And I look at our higher ed and our education system as a big.
Well, certainly not schools for everybody, and not everybody requires a university degree. I think a lot of these jobs require some post-high school education, whether it's a community college or a program designed specifically to do a particular job.
Apprenticeships are a really good
that sort of
example
thing, yes.
of that.
Yeah. It's so hard for me that grew up in the 50s to understand this pressure that but it's there. I didn't feel any pressure, I have to say. I enjoyed goofing off when I was, I did crazy things.
What was something crazy you did?
Oh, well, I'll tell you. One of the crazy things that Reno and Las Vegas are competitors. Now I'm a senior, no longer. So we go up for the state basketball tournament, and Reno beat us pretty bad. So a good friend of mine, who now unfortunately is a victim of dementia and I'm not sure how, but he said, we ought to burn a V on the front lawn of Reno High School. We got a can of gas, went there and, lit this big V, fired not close to the building at all, and it flamed. So the next Monday morning, Mr. Long was our principal, a good guy but a bit naive, and then you had the intercom communication, and he said, does anyone who went to Reno know anything about the V that was burned on the front lawn at Reno High School? Oh yes, Mr. Long, it was me. No, nobody said a word.
Senator, that is wild.
I don't know what. I don't know why I did it.
You volunteered.
Oh yeah, just the three of us that you're from Vegas, so we were staying at the same place. Never forget the Will's Motel. It's not there anymore, and we came up for the big game, and we had a lot of fun. Did some things.
We possibly left with a little truancy.
Yes, we did. Well, let me tell you, people should know I have a record. I was spent a night in the juvenile hall. When I was in high school. So I'm a junior in high school. There's a curfew, and three of my friends, we were out a little past the curfew, maybe 15 minutes, half hour. We're not talking about a.m. And we saw a police car, and we took evasive action. Big mistake. So they tracked us down, and we had just been at the chemistry club. That night I was vice president, and we were collecting money for the Christmas party, so we had a lot of quarters, and immediately they thought we had been knocking off vending machines.
This just gets worse for you.
Not true. And so we spent a night at the juvenile home, about three of us. They released us the next morning, and, we're high school kids. It was kind of a big deal. What it's like to be, as we used to call it, in the juvie. Yeah. My mother, God rest her soul, she was such a good person. My God, she saw this. This is the path to a life of crime. And my dad said to my mother, look, he was just asked past the curfew. He had done some, I'm sure, some wild things himself, but he was in high school. But yeah, true story. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we would have been best friends in high school because that sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. And we did things. These are things that we were in high school. I think the thing that you want to emphasize, hey, I was a regular guy, did some crazy things that I ought not to have done, but I was a regular
You're
guy.
young and dumb, and you're supposed to do those
Oh.
things. And
I sent money to the Banner Fireworks Company to get a lot of fireworks, Roman candles and a whole thing like that. And so I became a seller. And so, the kids, I said, look, this cost you this. And so I made some money. I did this in the front room of my house. I mean,
you were an entrepreneur
wait
too.
a minute, what about this? And then, all of a sudden the police cars were coming closer, and I got scared, and I stopped. Yeah.
It sounds to me like you were just fun to be around, and people want to be around people who make them feel good.
I think we had some fun, but I was also known as a very serious guy. I mean, I think my relatives thought I was very serious. My brother, who was 7 years younger, was cute, and so I was always serious about everything. But I had a lot of fun too. I mean, there was a part of me, and that being fun as I grew a little older, I really knew that there were a lot of opportunities for fun.
I feel like I very much identify with that. I
Yeah.
consider myself to be a serious person,
Yeah.
but I love to have fun.
Yeah.
And I have 3 siblings, and we're just very different. And I've always taken a different approach on life because I have one life to live, and I want to do so many things with it.
Yeah.
And so I really very much identify with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And we played, and we roughhoused. One of the cutest stories of my life was we had a basketball court in our backyard, and so some of my friends, we'd be shooting hoops, and on this particular day, they had tackled me, and we were on top. They weren't hurting me. My sister is like almost 5. She saw that, and I'll never forget. She ran out there. You stop doing that to my brother. She jumped on top of the pile and was piling away. I mean, we were all just, oh my God. Boy, and she hasn't changed much. Oh, but yeah, that was so
You guys
cute.
still roughhouse at family reunions?
Oh God, we don't do that anymore. But that was so precious. I mean, even we were just kids, 15, 16, 17 years old, but we really appreciated the fact, God, she is going to protect his brother, even if she's only 4 or 5. You stop doing that.
You're like, yeah, that's my sister.
Oh my God, we all laughed about that, but yeah. And she's always been in my court ever since we talk on telephone from time to time, and yeah.
I love that. Well, we've covered a lot today. One of the last things I want to ask you is just this idea of the Nevada spirit. And if you could define what you thought the Nevada spirit encompassed, how would you describe that to people?
I think in Nevada there is so much opportunity, and I think that's sensed. And the thing that, as I grew up in life, that I began to appreciate as older, you don't have to be here as a 20-year resident or having grown up in Las Vegas. The spirit of Nevada gives you the opportunity. You can join an organization, and this is particularly true in Las Vegas. If you have talent, if you're willing to be supportive, you become the president of Rotary or whatever it is in 4 or 5 years, even though you didn't arrive with the party with John C. Fremont. And I think that's part of the spirit. In fact, one of the great experiences, we're trying to promote film production, I guess, and the guy that played Rocky, Sylvester Stallone. From the waist up, I mean, my God, what a physique. Below the waist, he has thin, spindly legs. And he's not tall. He's not tall.
He's not.
So anyway, so this one promotion that we had was that I'm going to arm wrestle Sylvester, and so it was all set up. It was filmed, as part of the promotion. We arm wrestled Sylvester. Made a lot of deals. So anyway, I was asked one time, what is something that somebody does not or would not know about you? And I said, well, one time I arm wrestled Sylvester, and they said, well, who won? I said, I can't tell you. I signed a non-disclosure agreement. Not true at all. Not true at all. Yeah, we had funny, huh?
That's hilarious.
Well, you wanted some stories.
I love these stories.
I've tried to do what I can for you.
Sorry, I signed a non-disclosure.
Yeah, okay. No, that's yeah.
Well, as we kind of close out here, I want to just, thank you for your time, but also thank you for your service. It is, I really do appreciate it, and that will always stay with me now, that it is often impactful, the things that you don't do and don't say.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really important thing, going back to this, instant gratification, instant communication. It is okay to take a break. It is okay to not be first to respond.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's really important, and that it's an important lesson people can learn.
Well, they can. Let me just say that I've enjoyed reminiscing. I think it's pretty clear that I was very fortunate.
Yeah.
And I just had great parents who were very supportive and also cut me a lot of slack. I mean, yeah.
Do you think that upbringing taught you to also give people cut them slack and have more empathy and be patient?
I hope it did. I hope it did. I mean, I think I was tougher on my kids than my parents were on me. I mean, work before fun. Sunday afternoon during the summertime, we've got after church, we've got the lawn to mow. And some of I think, my kids, when they were 7 and then 5 and 3, whatever the age of, we all worked in the yard. Everyone worked. And we were fortunate enough to have a pool in our backyard. And I said, last week it took us 55 minutes to do this. Let's see if we can't break that record today. Oh, yeah. But
That's such good parenting tricks.
Oh God, Dad! And it was I was tough in that sense, discipline. I mean, wait a minute,
But I've also I've read a ton of stuff that chores make kids better adults, and so you also set them up for success by giving them, things that they had to accomplish and set their mind to, especially with a timer trick and stuff like that.
I think one of the saddest things we have several thousand homeless high school kids in our community. I can't imagine that.
I know.
That's just almost incomprehensible to me. What about these kids?
I know, when you think about the homeless population, that they're high school age and they're still making it they're still making an effort to go to school.
Yes.
And then there's organizations that give food bags on Fridays because the kids don't have anything to eat over the weekend. When I think about those components of our community, we have so far to go.
We do.
To fix. But then I think about all of the amazing strides that we have made.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those, I think that's the very essence of public service, is that it's never done.
I do. I don't recall in high school a single kid that was homeless. Now, the population was probably maybe 40, 50,000 people. When you have several million, you're going to have those kind of issues. But
there'll be more gaps.
yeah,
sure.
and I think we need to recognize that some of our kids aren't dealt a good hand.
Yeah.
You know, bad parents, abusive parents, alcoholic parents, and somehow they emerge from that, escape it as it were, and become very successful. Others, it leaves a scar that they can't overcome, and their lives become oftentimes dysfunctional as well.
I think this is a good example of where teachers can play such
Yes.
a big role in changing someone's trajectory, because you might be dealt a bad hand and have a bad home life. But if you are able to get to school and you have that right teacher and you have that good group of friends, you
Yes,
can pull
a
yourself
good group of
out.
friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we always know, but who you run around with makes an enormous difference.
I think you're right. It's, there's a lot more avenues for
Yeah.
someone to go astray.
Yeah.
And the old adage of you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that if that was shared and it really was hammered in, that it is okay to outgrow your friends. It is okay to, outgrow people that you're maybe related to.
Yeah.
Because it is important that you make a trajectory for yourself. And if you outgrow someone, it is okay to let them go. It doesn't mean that you don't have to be friends.
Yeah.
It just means that you're not going to give them all your time, energy, and treasure.
That's very true. And you are the one that charts your own destiny.
Yeah.
Like I say, I've been very fortunate. But, I've had experiences that have made me very modest. I graduated from the university, was commissioned as a second lieutenant. I've come back to Las Vegas in January of 1960. I admit it now, but I'm a college graduate and an officer and a gentleman by act of Congress. What more? What more? So I came. I couldn't find a job. I went to the unemployment office. I could not find a job. Finally, I placed an application. The RICO, Reynolds Electrical and Engineering, they had the contract at at the facility up at 60 miles out of town. It'll come to me in a second. And so I left a resume there. And so the unemployment office called and said, "We've got a job for you." I said, "Well, what is this? At the Hacienda?" I said, "It's a porter." "Tell them I'll take it." Before I reported, the RICO thing came through. Yeah. And I called and thanked the people at the Hacienda but I lucked out.
Well, I have to tell you, this has just been so wonderful.
Well, we're struggling a long way about all these funny things that happened to me.
Do you mind if we do some rapid fire before we leave?
Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead.
Amazing. What is a must-visit spot for newcomers?
Yeah, I think they need to go on the Strip. That's what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
The best place really to view the city is the Stratosphere.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it revolving. You can see the Strip. You can see around. That's a good place to be.
Do you have any suggestions for the best outdoor activity?
Community-sponsored leagues for softball, basketball.
I think that's great.
I participated in one of those very briefly, not with great success.
But you had fun and maybe a beer.
Oh, I had fun. Oh, we had a beer afterwards, But those are some of the things that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is your go-to coffee shop?
I go to Starbucks a lot.
Starbucks?
Yeah,
Great.
I do, and they're very good to me. So I'll have to tell you another little secret. On my birthday, whatever you want. So I have never ordered. Starbucks comes in small, medium, large size, and second size is a grande. I've never had one before. That's a size, and so the gal there was really said, "Look, you can order anything you want." And I've always considered myself a very disciplined guy. Okay, I'll have the grande size, and she said, "Look, you don't want just coffee. Get anything. What do you recommend?" She said, "A frappuccino." Well, I went rogue, and I ordered a grande frappuccino. And I thought, God, I always tried to discipline myself. If you start with a smaller size, if you let loose, you're going to, watching the ultra size.
But it's your birthday. You let loose on your birthday.
Well, I told my kids not to worry. I think, oh my God, has he totally lost it? The venti is the big one. That's what my dog. And I go out with her. I always, buy, because sometimes I've got a gift card that somebody's given me. But yeah. I think Dad's gone rogue. God. Has he lost it?
You're like, it's just a grande.
It's just a grande.
We've talked about this before, but what is your favorite place to unwind?
I think at home.
At home? That's a great answer. What is the best view in the city?
I think the Stratosphere.
Stratosphere.
Yeah, the Stratosphere is a terrific view of the city. There are other good views as well, but there's some great views.
What is your favorite thing to do on the weekend?
I like to read. I'm not real well organized, and without the support that I relied upon for my political career and professional career, I'm disorganized, so I'm trying to catch up.
What is one must-have experience for visitors?
Red Rock is quite scenic. The Valley of Fire. I would include in that probably very few people go to, and that's going down to what the Democrats call Boulder Dam, and some of us still do, but it's Hoover Dam. And to go through that guided tour, it takes you down, it shows you how it's operated, shows you there's a film that has how it was constructed. It was quite a big deal, and you do kind of, after they explain it to you, you kind of understand what they did.
That's true. I will say one last question. What would you say is the one perk of living in Nevada?
I say the people and the weather. The people and the weather, yeah. Nobody likes it at 115, but by and large, we have pretty good weather year around here. What I'm saying, the lifestyle that we have now, our home is air conditioned. We get into our air conditioned car. Unless we're in construction or out there, we go to an air conditioned office. At night, if we want to have what I would call a few adult beverages, we go to our favorite place. It's refrigerated. Basically, unless you're out in it, and I must say, if you're doing gardening, and I did, up until the time I was governor, did my own gardening, with my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the weather's okay. You're not shoveling snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Well, I have just really, really, really enjoyed everything about this. I've learned a lot from you.
Oh, you probably more than you care to learn.
Of all the titles that you have, I hope you accept a new one, which is friend.
No, thank you so much.